Today, of course, our guest is one of the market's most outstanding investigative reporters. A little bit about Walt. He joined CBS 3's news team in 1980, covering the police beat, and since that time, he's earned a reputation for breaking many of our market's area top stories. His hard-driving and in-depth reporting style has won him more than 20 awards, including 8 Philadelphia Emmy Awards and an Emmy nomination in 2004, plus honors from the Society of Professional Journalists, the Associated Press, UPI, and the Philadelphia Press Association. In 2004, Philly Magazine named Walt the best TV reporter in its Best of Philadelphia, or Best of Philly issue. He's a Philadelphia native, of course, graduate of the University of Pennsylvania. He received a Bachelor of Arts degree in English. He made his move to television following 5 years as the morning drive and police beat reporter for the old 1210 WCAU AM. Walt also worked as a reporter for the Bulletin and the Mainline Times, where at 23, he was named the youngest managing editor in the history of the paper. In his spare time, Walt works out with weights, he likes to run, he fishes, he golfs, and he's a volunteer firefighter in his community. All around good guy. Let me introduce today's guest, Walt Humber. Walt.
Thank you. The Mainline Times is a weekly newspaper, and 9 out of 10 people said it was a lot more weekly when I worked for it. So, and one minor factual correction: the estimate on Mr. Moran's age, he is not a day over 69. Tom, I was highly offended by it. Just don't want that 70.1 to go into the record books unchallenged. If you don't mind, before I get started, I want to say that one of the blessings of this business, especially for somebody like me who has an ego the size of Montana, is that I am constantly humbled by the people I meet on the street, firefighters, police officers, everyday people. And I want to say, just to begin with, that I'm genuinely humbled by so many people in our group. I talked to Tom, I talked to Willie, a number of others. You do really, despite all of our disclaimers, stand on the shoulders of the people who came before you and who I was lucky enough to work contemporaneously with. And I just want to say that I'm very proud and very happy to be here, and have taken just a lot of joy already just in our dinner table, lunch table conversations. You were the beginnings of and the impetus for broadcasting and TV journalism in this city, and having been born and raised here, I can say that without any fear of contradiction. And I do remember Elmo Whippleweather, as I was telling Willie. Bobby Kravitz, I also can't tell you any outright lies here, because Kravitz has known me, Bobby's known me far too long. He even came up with a slogan for me when I was first starting in TV. We had Denenberg's Dump and the Action News, whatever, and Bobby said, well, you need a slogan. He said, if it's happening in Philadelphia, it's news to me, which I know that's always worked out well, and I appreciate that, Kravitz. And Willie always told me, by the way, I had a very good face for radio. I found that to be very encouraging. We got into TV anyway. Really, as much as everything changes technologically in our business, and as much as the faces change, nothing ever changes, because I can remember doing a story 10 years ago about Vice President and quail, and now I'm doing a story about Vice President and quail. So, you know, it's all pretty much the same. I have a fairly deep religious faith. I do believe that sometimes I'm being put in places, and one of the early messages I got when I was 23 and running the Mainline Times was my wife at the time, after I'd worked a 70-hour week, bleeding over this little weekly newspaper I was putting out every week. She said, honey, do you know what happens to all the copies of the Mainline Times that you don't sell? And unfortunately, at that time, my wife was working at the Norbert Veterinary Hospital. And so some of my best work may not have gone in front of your face, it may have gone under your puppy. But I just want everybody, just remember, that was a message early in my career. Someone was trying to tell me to go back and get the degree in medicine. I didn't, and I wound up here. The job can be dangerous. Bobby, I'm sure, can tell a lot of good war stories. I've got my share. Probably the most notable is the story you think you're going out to cover isn't the story you wind up covering. Flash forward to 1980, probably everybody in this room remembers Tug McGraw throwing the winning pitch when we won the World Series. Something, by the way, that may never happen again. But I was up in a helicopter, one of 5 or 6, that were circling the vet as that pitch was being thrown, and like everybody in the vet at the time, I was looking at the pitch and listening to the game on my earpiece. What no one had thought to do, the Phillies or my helicopter pilot, who was a Vietnam veteran, was to realize that if we won, there were going to be a lot of fireworks. I would suggest to all of you who have either not been in combat or who have watched 4th of July fireworks, imagine being in a helicopter in the middle of them. We came within a very few feet of having our tail rotor blown off. We were literally hit by the explosions as the fireworks went off around us. But by the grace of God, we were just close enough. Otherwise, you'd probably have someone else here speaking to you today. The other memorable moment, or one of them, was the tragic 78 Move shootout, where we had a police officer killed and a number of others wounded and firefighters injured. As a young, intrepid radio reporter with not a great sense of his own mortality at that age, I had sneaked inside the barricades and was actually in the middle, or close to it, of the shootout, although it wasn't quite as close as I thought I was. I stood up after the initial volley and went out and stood next to a police van, which was about from here to the camera. And as I stood next to the police van, a bullet went through the light bar head high about 5 feet from where I was standing. The number of the police van is 604, and that is the lottery number I play to this day. It has been a long time since 1978. You also have moments, we went out undercover and we were getting pictures of drug dealers, and we went out in the police undercover van, and it was very dangerous. We were wearing bulletproof vests, and we had a little peephole that the police were using, and they would call in strikes of other police as they saw the deals going down, and they'd arrest the people, and then the police would go back, and we repeated this several times. And as we were laying literally on the floor of this van, breathless, not wanting to make a noise, because after the first roundup, now the drug dealers are looking for where the cops are that are calling in the strikes. We're listening to them saying, if we find out where they are, we're going to shoot them and the whole deal. Well, it all went fine. We get back to the police station. We're taking our bulletproof vests off. And Officer Smith says to Officer Jones, "You know, Charlie, we got to get a van with bulletproof sides on it." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, you could stick a broomstick through the side of that." I said, "You mean if they had hurt us, they would have shot us?" "Oh, yeah, probably." So I made it a point after that, if I was going to do any undercover drug work, I was definitely going to make sure it was a bulletproof van. So that's really important. I guess probably to get a little personal here, because I take the job very personally. One of the neatest moments of my personal life, I have a son who's 24, who's graduated college, and a daughter who's a sophomore in college. When I drove my son to school every day, and this is one of the blessings that we probably all know of working in this market, I drove him to class, and every day I would tell him a story on the way to school. It was a continuing story. So, I mean, some days if I was real good, when I got him to school, he would refuse to get out of the car, not because he didn't want to go to school, but he wanted to hear what was going to happen the next day. So if I did it right. And at some point there, I asked him what he wanted to do for a living, what do you want to be when you grow up, and without any hesitation, and I still remember it, he said, "I want to be a storyteller," which was phenomenal. But anyway, that's what I basically do. I mean, not to put too clear a point on it, a rewrite man for the Daily News once told me a reporter is somebody who stands around all day with his bag out hoping somebody will dump something in it. And in essence, without glorifying it, that's what we do. To give you a sense of the environment I work in, and that's why I was telling you the stories that I was, we had to give you the clearest sense of what almost every one of my days is like. We had a horrible car crash in 1974. We had a group of young women who were coming from a field hockey game on a beautiful fall afternoon. It was on Bryn Mawr Avenue out on the main line, and for whatever reason, the car went out of control and crashed. And there was a writer for the old Philadelphia Bulletin who did the story and quoted a police sergeant. And the police sergeant said, "When I walked up to the car, it sounded like a bunch of kids screaming at the top of a roller coaster." And it was one of the most graphic descriptions of the horror that we deal with in my end of the world almost every day. And I have said to people, and I say to you now, that I have spent most of my life at the top of the roller coaster. That's where I am. I'm there when the family loses their only child. I'm there when the car goes out of control and runs into the crowd. I'm there when the couple on their honeymoon, the plane goes down. That's what I do. I am on that roller coaster. I am there in the moments that you can't script, that you have to go by human emotion, and you have to also deal with the competitive pressures that are pressing you to do a story, and not just do a story, but do a story better and faster than all the other people who are competing. And it can be very, very, very difficult. I think for journalists, I think what I would say to younger journalists coming up is that we should, in journalism, have something that's the equivalent of the Hippocratic Oath in medicine, which is basically first, do no harm. First, do no harm. There was a huge story, you probably recall it, of a little girl named Delamar Vera who they thought had died, and in fact she had been kidnapped and was alive, and after 6 years she was returned to her family. I was made aware of that story. I was made aware of it very early on. I was made aware of it so early on that the little girl was still with the woman that had kidnapped her when I knew about the story. And it was in the middle of a ratings period, and I made my bosses aware of the story, and I said, you're going to hear a story that's going to become an international story, which it did, and I said, you're going to hear a story that we can't touch, because this young girl is still with her kidnapper, and if we put this on the air, the kidnapper will disappear, the girl may disappear, and we will possibly be responsible at a minimum for her disappearance, if not worse. So we sat on the Delamar Vera story for the better part of 3 weeks in the middle of one of the key rating periods of the year. Bleeding, worrying, getting up every minute, thinking that another station and perhaps someone less responsible, or perhaps someone who just didn't go to the time to find out what the dynamics were, would air that story and would kick our tails down Main Street. And I submit to all of you who have to pay tuitions, mortgage, and in my case, alimony, that is a risk of some professional worry, and it is a risk that was based on ethics. By the grace of God, we did break the story. It was a huge story, which finished with me being interviewed by the Japanese equivalent of 60 Minutes, so I have actually saw myself with subtitles. Normally I don't understand most of what I say. In that case, I really didn't understand what I said. But the point being that we have to make a quick decision in difficult circumstances over explaining a story and adding to the trauma, and too often I think the sensational trumps the meaningful. We did a series of stories. You were kind of mentioned my Emmys. My first Emmy was for a story called Why Sylvia Died. And I'm going to have trouble getting through this, so forgive me, but this was 1987, and we had a little girl named Sylvia Smith who was left in a room by her mother, who was out buying crack, and slowly starved to death in that room. And her fingernail marks were found on the door of the room as this child starved. And that one day in that one awful place blossomed into a series of 35 or 40 reports detailing every possible inadequacy of the Child Protective Services system in this city at that time. It has since gotten better. I won't use the word good, but it has gotten better. And the bottom line for that, and that's not just journalistic ego tripping, is that after having done those 35 or 40 reports, I documented only one phone call from anyone saying, nice job, we'd like to see more of that kind of reporting. I don't need to be stroked. I mean, I get paid a reasonable amount of money and I have a big ego, but I submit to you that without the input and the informed input of people who are watching TV and people who are demanding to see more in-depth reports, we cannot possibly, as individual reporters, carry the ethical and journalistic burden that we need to carry to do the kind of stories that really desperately need to be done. There is an unfortunate lowest common denominator dumbing down of the people who are taking information from us and from the internet. People don't want to be confused with the facts. They don't want to be made uncomfortable with the gray area stories, and most of the stories we do are gray area stories. The stories we're telling you about, by and large, we're covering symptoms. We're not dealing with, and I don't mean we at Channel 3, but I mean we as a profession too often are not dealing with root causes that require much deeper looking and much more intense and prolonged looking than we are actually doing. And that is what we need to do. My statement as far as that goes, and what I say to people is that frequently we go out to crime scenes where there's been some awful crime, some terrible crime, and I always say the people that we as journalists need to think about are the faces behind the windows. Because when you go to the crime scenes, you see the faces behind the windows. You see the little children who are too frightened to come out or won't even be allowed out on the street because there's too much crime. You see the mothers who are afraid to even take their kids to a schoolyard. And worse than anything, you see the elderly who are basically paralyzed and kept prisoner inside their homes because to come out is to expose themselves to a whole variety of indignities. And yet, even as they stay inside, with the price of utilities and other things going up, they are literally prisoners either inside or outside of their homes. But they are the faces in the windows, the poor, frightened people who you occasionally catch a glimpse of peeking out of the windows from behind the curtains. We're out on the street with the bright lights and the people who are willing to talk to us, but it is by and large the faces behind the windows in every kind of neighborhood, not just in the city, in the suburbs, everywhere, that need to be taken care of. I would say to probably make it easier, I would like to see in our business, print, radio, TV, more of a sense of mission, more of a sense of our obligation, certainly our moral and ethical obligation to do something about the people who are the faces behind the windows. We have more information flowing into us than ever before. But this business is not going to be powered by email. It's not going to be powered by the internet. It's going to be augmented by it. It's not going to be powered by it. You can access all the websites you want that'll tell you about all the illegal weapons and all of the murders, but none of that makes up for one tear on the face of a mother who has just lost a son who's been shot by a semi-automatic weapon. It's never going to replace the first-hand contact, and it's never going to replace actually doing something about the kind of problems that we have. Technology can advance all at once. Our business is got to be and has got to be in the beginning, middle, and end about the people out there that we're serving. So when I think about our business, I think about leaving the world a better place than it was when we got here. And I think that is probably as simple a goal as I could have for any of us who are in this business. And a final footnote, that little kid I told all the stories to just graduated from Harvard. He was president of the Harvard Literary Review. Forgive me the kvelling. Graduated summa cum laude and is now going on to become have a doctorate. So storytelling ain't bad. Thank
you. Okay. Some questions from anybody? Joe?
Walt, your favorite Frank Rizzo story?
Joe, the ones that are tellable in public, or the ones that aren't. Oh my God, there are so very many that. Oh my God, this is really going to take a second.
Tickle his brain.
Probably, yeah.
The move is pretty good.
Yeah, the move is good. The cummerbund coming down.
That was another one.
The gun.
The nightstick in the.
Nightstick, right?
Nightstick in the riot. People jumping off the Henry Avenue Bridge. Oh my God, there are so many Frank Rizzo stories, Joe. Oh my God, I am really trying to think of one that I can actually repeat.
Well, tell me a funny one.
Well, I can tell you, he was going down East River Drive, and he saw these ducks or these geese.
Oh my God, the geese.
Good.
The geese. He was going down. That's Joe. That's the one. He was going down West River Drive. West River Drive. Now, everybody pictured Frank Rizzo as being what he was, which was a macho cop, but he had a heart, about the size of, Fairmount Park. He was driving down, and there was a relatively minor oil spill somehow in the Schuylkill River, but the geese had gotten coated with oil. And those geese, he got on, and you would always hear him get on the police radio, M. Mary Wonder Radio, when he was mayor. M. Mary Wonder Radio, is somebody taking care of these geese? Well, there are still guys who are working in the Park District who will tell you they spent probably the next 4 or 5 days in uniform scrubbing the geese to get and the poor guys, because they actually caught the guys that dumped the oil or hurt the geese. These guys probably did more time than probably the worst violent criminal in the city of Philadelphia. I mean, this poor guy probably figured, that's the last time I'm ever, what were you thinking? That's a perfect one. The geese story is a perfect one. You did not want to get on that side of, didn't want to get on that side of Frank Rizzo.
I want to ask, how do you feel about the reporters not telling when you come into this government situation now where a reporter has gotten a story from a source that didn't want to be mentioned, and all of a sudden now he's in a grand jury facing some time in prison?
It's a very scary scenario. Yeah, it's a very scary scenario. We could all be, we literally could be arrested. I've had several of them in the last few years where we get access to grand jury information. And the problem, it's quite a simple thing. You get access to a grand jury investigation of any type that you have no right to, and you report that. The judge who is impaneling the grand jury has total right of law to subpoena you to appear in his or her courtroom and explain and demand to know where you got the information. I am mandated as a reporter not to reveal that source. At that point, the rubber meets the road. There's nowhere to go. You're against the wall, and if his or her honor decides they want that information badly enough, you go to jail for contempt. Beginning and end of story. So, I mean, it makes it frightening because, needless to say, the most interesting stories are the ones that are before the grand juries. That's why they're investigating. So it's like bees to honey. We all want that that information. But any of us could be put in that situation. I've actually had at least 2 serious conversations with our corporate attorney saying, I know this. If I can find out that, will I go to jail? And he says, So that's a very serious thing.
And you rely on tips, don't you?
Oh, totally. And there's a whole bunch of people. There are a whole bunch of people that always have a reason for wanting you to know about something. So, I mean, the information is there, and it's particularly dangerous when the tips come in to the next level, which is your bosses, and they say, hey, we have a tip, check this out. Sometimes I can decide if it's a valid tip. When you get told to check it out, you really don't have any choice. So, yes, Bobo?
You and I started out with your tape recorders, big film cameras, tripods only, because they were too heavy to carry. Microphones records. Our big technology was the Minicam, and the wireless mic was our greatest technology.
Incredible.
Now the new technology out, Channel 6 has already announced they're getting their HD camera, but all this other technology out there is also probably going to be melded with the computer. What do you think's going on?
Well, it's interesting because along with it all melding and all getting smaller and converging, what's going to converge is my job description. And for your grandchildren or children who are in the business, their job descriptions are going to change. What's going to happen is we're not going to need, for example, microwave. We're not going to need satellite trucks. We're going to have fiber optic cable. A cameraman may still, or camerawoman may still go out and shoot a story on a disc camera, but they'll flip that disc to me. I'll put it in my laptop, sit in my hotel room or whatever, I'll edit on the laptop, send it back over a phone cable, and then maybe I'll go out in front of a camera and front it live.
You know, there's a Cleveland station now, they call them VJs, video journalists. They're doing away with regular reporters. And starting back with you and I, some of us guys started, as I did, as a video journalist where I took my camera out, did the interviews, got in front, said blah, blah, blah.
And brought it back.
And brought it back.
That's it. And that's what I say. That's where the technology thing, because what's going to happen is they ain't enough room for both of us here. It's going to be no longer camera person and reporter working as a team.
Right.
The reporter's going to do everything. Right. That is probably okay, although I don't particularly like it. But what happens is, for every minute I spend, no matter how simple it gets, doing technical stuff on my laptop, that's one less minute I have to get additional information or to double check information that I have. To the extent that I become production staff, I lose whatever percentage of my editorial time that I have, and I don't have that much time anyway on a given story. So I'm concerned about the merging of technology because as we get rid of camera people and technical people and use the new technology, I get saddled with a whole bunch of other things. And I don't mind the extra work, but it keeps me from doing what I should be doing, which is to find out more about the story. So you're going to get faster stories, probably better looking stories in the end, but you may not get stories that are as accurate because I'm not going to have as much time to do my job.
And the last couple of after contracts, KY has wanted to expand the usage of reporters, haven't they?
Oh,
into the radio station.
Jurisdictional walls are all coming down.
So there's no longer, I work for the TV and you work for the radio.
No, no, the jurisdictional walls are all being dissolved, and honestly, driven by technology. I mean, you can't, no harm, no foul. I mean, it's got to happen. I mean, it's a logical
You
evolution.
started that way, right?
Yeah.
You did radio and television.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now it's going back.
Now it's going back again. Exactly. Yep.
Yes.
Have you ever done an investigative report where you got maybe too close to political corruption or something and you were threatened, that type of thing?
I've gotten death threats, but not for that type of thing. As a matter of fact, one of my colleagues got a death threat a few weeks ago for a story, and it's really weird. It's always the story that you didn't think anybody was concerned about, and you'll just get a note in the mail saying, you know, don't start your car or something like that. I've gotten a few over the years, and a few of them, by the way, were directed at stories I did. You know, you tick somebody off and they say they do something or imply something nasty. But no, I've never gotten I knock on wood, have never gotten a back off, don't do that story. In general, no. There are other ways to do it. I'll give you an example. Although I got to shield this. Let's just put it this way: in another country, in another kingdom, long ago and far away, not our TV station, a major player in this area, without my ever knowing it, went 3 or 4 levels above my head after I did a series of investigative reports, and tried to put my journalism career, shall we say, on hold. And fortunately, by virtue of the person who was there, and we're talking 15 years ago now, was given the gate and told to, you know, get out of the building, basically. But you never hear the bullet that hits you. So I think the real danger, there's probably the overt threats generally, thank God, aren't followed up on. I think the bigger problem is the person who knows how things work and tries to kind of subtly go behind you and undermine you for whatever reason. And of course, there's always the threat. I mean, part of the things that are causing us so many problems now, or causing us to think 2 and 3 times, is the business, like every other business, is so highly litigious. I mean, everything we do, everything we say, and it's not even libel and slander. When you listen to the legal seminars now, it's invasion of privacy. It's not what you said. It's not necessarily even what you did, but you were standing on, you know, Joe Jones's or Mary Smith's front lawn when you took a picture of their car, and you were trespassing on their property. So the legal issues have gotten way more complex than just, you know, getting the fact wrong. I mean, that's always bad to get the fact wrong. You can get sued for that. But I mean, it's very, very complicated. Just the gathering, you know, video's okay, audio's a violation of the Wiretap Act. When are you allowed to gather audio? When is it reasonable expectation of privacy? I mean, we have seminars regularly to tell us that. So it's become much more complicated. It really has.
I want to thank Walt Hunter, ladies and
Thank
gentlemen.
you all. It's nice to be here. Thank you. Very, very much.
You know, Larry Bentley was right when he suggested that we ask Walt to be with us, because that's excellent. Thanks, Walt.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, as Frank mentioned, we're back at Bala next month. Our guest will be Larry Kane. That's in March. In April, Carol Welch, who is the
Vice President of Programming.
Vice President of Programming for Channel 6, is going to be with us. As you know, Channel 6 has probably 5 ladies who are, would you say 5? Linda Munich is one, and Carol, and
Rebecca Carroll.
well, the glass curtain has certainly broken as far as women in positions of power for Channel 6, and she's right in the middle of this, and of course would make a great guest. And finally, in May, Ray Didinger, who again was unable to be with us last month because of the illness of his dad, has agreed to be with us. He's got a new book out. Larry has a new book out. We'll see you at Bala in a month. Thank you.